Hello, and welcome to another episode of Life Are We There Yet? The self-progress podcast which seeks out ways to lead as fulfilling a life as possible on this poor man's sitcom that is life. We are your recurring generic characters, Isaac Rookmore.
Hello.
And I am Jack Henderson. And on today's episode, we'll be doing the second in our little triplet series of sporting episodes by talking to someone who has, over the last couple of years, discovered the health benefits of running. No, really, running, who'd have thought it'd be good for you? We are, of course, referring more specifically to the benefits that sport and, in particular, running can have on your mental health and well-being. All that and more to come, but first, Isaac, as always, roll the theme, June.
Up and down, left and right, you say we should, I think we might wander for a while. Up and down, left and right, you say we should, I think we might wander for a while. And we came here from somewhere and we could go anywhere else, just don't ask me, are we there?
So, today's episode, we are joined by the wonderful Jess Robson. She's probably sat here wondering what the hell she's doing.
Hi.
Having invited us into her office here in the heart of London. You can hear, you'll probably hear a lot of sirens over the course of the episode, so apologies. That's what London... Blame Brexit. Anyway, Jess set up last year a mental health support group called Run, Talk, Run, which is very much centered around, going out for a casual run and opening up at the same time. Jess, as I said, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know you, what is it that you do, work-wise or otherwise? Running, mental health. What's your main focus at the moment?
Okay, so the day job is completely nothing to do with mental health or running. I'm an office manager day to day. That's the 9 to 5. Aside from that, I am very much focused on running in a personal sense, so my training. And Run, Talk, Run in the last year has taken over every other bit of spare time, which I am delighted about. That is my main focus, Run, Talk, Run. The mental health support group on legs, essentially.
You've spoken very openly about some of the struggles that you've had with your own mental health. So I just wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the sort of things that you've gone through and experienced and where it's all sort of started and the first sort of signs you had that you were perhaps struggling with some mental health issues.
Absolutely. I think for me, it started from a very early age, in as much as I was always very shy. And I think when you're young, sort of from 5 to 15, you can just label a child as shy without thinking the word social anxiety. You don't label children as socially anxious.
Yeah, I mean, labeling a 6-year-old as socially anxious is probably a bit extreme. So
yeah, so I think my I was seeing signs then that I had anxiety in a big way, but it really emerged at the age of 14, 15 in the form of bulimia. I think that was an age where I was starting to compare myself to peers, starting to notice every small way in which I possibly wasn't fitting in, although on the outside I was definitely fitting in. I just started questioning myself more, and trying to fit in looked like throwing up my food because I wanted to be slim. And I notice now with hindsight that I was surrounded by eating disorders. I went to a girls' school, and I think there were a lot of comparisons to other girls that were probably very ill themselves. So that's where it began for me, and I have dipped in and out of depressive phases since, really, up until last summer. Sometimes that is accompanied by bulimia. Sometimes I manage to refrain from those thoughts, but it's definitely something I have to work really hard to keep on top of, even now.
So for those that don't know, how does bulimia differ, say, from anorexia nervosa or other eating disorders? You mentioned, the purging and throwing up food, but
yes.
is that the main difference, or?
I would say yes, that is the main difference. a big way that I would describe it is in anorexia, there is a lot of control over their situation. Not they like to control, but that's their way of regaining some control over whatever it is they feel out of control with. Whereas with bulimia, I felt the opposite, very much out of control, because I was binging and purging with no sense of control. I would berate myself over the lack of control, actually. The fact that I couldn't stop myself from eating in the first place, and the fact that I couldn't stop myself from bringing it back up after. So I think that's the main difference from my perspective.
Yeah. So, I mean, for someone like me, we've read about stuff like bulimia a lot leading up to this podcast. But for someone that doesn't understand it perhaps as much as they should, is it all the control aspects of it, or is it the fear of what others
Lack
think?
of control.
Yeah. Is it the fear what others think that then leads to the control or lack of control aspect of it, or is it something else?
There's definitely something else behind it. It very much started as a means, or what I perceived as a means to stay slim. That was how it began. I thought, if I bring up my food, logically, I won't get fat. I won't put on weight.
So it all sort of started as a bit of a almost superficial thing just to lose the weight.
Absolutely. It didn't necessarily start from depression. I believe bulimia caused depression, not the other way around for me. It can vary person to person, but very quickly, as soon as I got into a habit with bringing food up, it became less about staying slim and far more about being an emotional coping mechanism.
As you said, it's a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And ultimately, yes, you do choose to, but as someone that's suffered from an eating disorder myself, I know that it feels like there isn't a choice. It very much feels like that is the only thing left to do. And I think that's one of the things that people struggle to see, is that they think, oh, you're doing it yourself. You're bringing this upon yourself. Yeah, you're nodding like you've had this a lot. When you've reached a mental state where it feels like that is the only way forward from there, and until you have that kind of cathartic release that comes from it emotionally, whether it's sort of berating yourself or whatever you feel, it's a huge intense rush of emotion that accompanies it.
Absolutely. I felt like I was letting go of every bit of tension inside me with purging, which isn't, I'm not ashamed to admit that now, but it still, I guess, touches me to admit that. The fact that there was that emotional release with it, like you say, is a good way to describe it.
It sort of fills a void, I would say, to an extent. Or, well, for me, certainly with the binging, that's what it was. It was, I guess, comfort eating to an absolute extreme.
Yeah.
So it is just finding a way to vent in the most extreme way possible, perhaps.
Absolutely. It is a form of self-harm, really. And I think, like you say, it carries, because people perceive it to be a choice, and like you say, there is an element of choice in there, because we know people perceive it that way, that means we do carry a lot of shame with it.
And as well, I think certainly, probably more so from a girl's perspective, it's almost cool, like seen as popular to be skinny. To the more weight you can lose, it becomes competitive.
Yes.
And once you actually have something that is recognizable as, say, anorexia, they can often become competitive with other people who can lose the most weight, who can be, it's a negative thinking cycle that feeds itself, and that just leads to more and more weight loss and a worse mental state therein.
Yeah, absolutely. I was always comparing myself to the girls who were sadly very anorexic, and it was terrible. And I feel really sad for myself and those girls now, but I was envious that they could exercise so much control and not eat in the first place, which is a really terrible mental state to be in. But yeah, that's how it was. I was very envious.
Yeah, well, it seems an obvious point to make, but do you think that sort of pressure to look like those other people comes more from like a face-to-face peer sort of element, or is it more social media these days? It seems everyone's sort of jumping down and criticizing on social media, but does that play a role at all? Or did it with you, or does it with other people that struggle with it?
It's a good question. I think when I was that age, 14, 15, Instagram especially wasn't really a thing yet. I think for me, it was more the face-to-face comparisons as opposed to online comparisons. I don't know, we were on Facebook, but we weren't using it to post images of ourselves too much at that point, unlike Instagram now, where it is all very image-focused. I think it was more... It was also the school I was in.
I was going to say, do you think it was made worse by the fact it was an all-girls school?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Particular environment.
I mean, it had benefits in as much as we weren't necessarily a very catty school. We had nothing to compete over in terms of boys' attention. But we were very driven and competitive in other ways.
Had to win in other ways, I guess.
Yeah,
And
it was a very
garner
academic school.
favour, yeah.
And if you weren't sporty, you were a bit strange, and I wasn't sporty. So
you
I think
must
that
be
played a part.
strange.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was all about
It's the
what
natural-
team are you on?
Oh, it's the natural conclusion. I mean, you're sat here before us like, you're such an utter freak. So.
Yeah, and that used to upset me when I was 14, and now I love
For
it.
the record, she is not a complete and utter freak.
I am, but little do they know. Embrace your strangeness as an adult. Yeah, I think it was more the face-to-face comparisons, actually.
With your, it's a bit of a tangent, but with your struggles, have you taken medication to help? Because one of the things that's starting to become a theme is we've had a couple of episodes now where we've had two different viewpoints on medication. We've had a doctor who's very much advocates the use of, and someone who's has a more negative feeling towards them because of something that happened to him. Feeling that it contributed to his dad's suicide. So
Right.
I was wondering if have you used antidepressants or other such medication to help, and what have your sort of views on them been?
Very good question for me at the moment. I have just made the decision to cease taking antidepressants.
Huge.
It feels like a big deal
Yeah,
to me.
No, I'm not
and a
being
very
sarcastic.
controversial one to both my boyfriend and the people close to me. I think obviously naturally they worry. I was very much for taking medication, and still am in a way. I mean, if they help, if they do soften the edges a bit, then absolutely, there's no reason why you shouldn't. I have, this might seem a little bit wishy-washy, but I've read a book recently which has completely transformed the way I've seen antidepressants.
What was the book?
It's called Lost Connections. I'm still halfway through, by Johan Hari. And essentially, I don't know if you've heard of it. I'll just give it a
I
little,
have not.
little
Give it a plug. Go
brief of it. Essentially, people come to GPs having experienced adversity or grief or a loss. We are so quick to prescribe antidepressants as a means to cope with that loss. We're not taking into account that it was a life event that caused depression, not necessarily a chemical imbalance that caused depression. So personally, my experiences with Run Talk Run and the work I've done in therapy, and aside from my antidepressants, I think that's taken me further in my recovery.
So you've had some sort of counselling. Was it sort of CBT?
Yes.
Yeah. So CBT is cognitive-based therapy.
Yes.
Yes. And there are two types, I think, of main therapy. There's cognitive-based therapy and people-centered therapy. I think there's another one. And cognitive-based therapy is really about finding ways to cope and sort of mechanisms to deal with the worries that come and the thought patterns associated. Would you? I'd argue that perhaps. I'll put my hands up. I've not had either, but people-centered therapy looks more at getting to the very sort of issue at the heart of the problem.
Yes.
Which has CBT been good for you? Would you rather have had person-centered therapy? I know you've only had the experience of one, so it's hard to compare. But
it Is, yes. I didn't have a fantastic time in therapy. The lessons I learnt through doing CBT, i.e. the tools he gave me to take home to work on myself, were fantastic. But I personally didn't open up to him in the way that I should have. I was very resistant. I was very low on self-esteem when I turned up to therapy. So I really struggled with the eye contact, telling a stranger my problems.
And how would you, having struggled yourself with that, how would you advise people that perhaps would like some therapy or have the same sort of reservations and say go into therapy and tell them just superficial problems, not what's really going on? How would you say to combat that? How would you encourage people to really, because it is difficult to tell a stranger
Absolutely.
your deepest, darkest secrets. It's incredibly difficult. So how would you go about doing it differently now? Do you think you would be able to? Do you think there's a way to sort of make it easier?
I
Or
think,
will it always be this massively difficult thing? Because I think there'll always be that element that it is a very difficult thing to do.
Oh, it definitely is. Doesn't really matter where you are in your journey. I think I am now in a place where I could probably revisit therapy in a better way than I could then, because I'm a lot more willing to actually share without holding this filter in front of what I'm saying. My advice would be, if therapy is too much right now, and I think it is too much for a lot of people that are in that really dark place, then just talk to anyone. Absolutely anyone. And it doesn't have to be in a cushioned, small little room opposite a stranger. It can be on a walk with a friend. You don't have to look someone in the eye. It could be on the phone to a friend, literally just speaking your truth of what's going on. It's so handy. Because I think it was that intense environment, the intimidating sort of environment in therapy, that didn't sit well with me.
So we talked about medication, CBT, but of course, you know, you've become a runner since sort of struggling with that initial phase of the issues you had.
Yeah.
You know, was it? Have you always been sporty? You said you weren't at school, but was it sort of a light bulb that occurred, a light bulb moment that occurred that you suddenly started running?
Yeah, I wasn't sporty at school at all. I hated it, really, really hated it. And I think that was also because of low self-esteem. I didn't like being in the spotlight. Didn't like to be the one who was batting in front of all her peers. Do you know what I mean? It was when I moved to Oxford to go to a secretarial college that I was in a house full of girls that I really wanted to be friends with. And I realised that I could not keep bringing up my food without it going unnoticed. I didn't want to be bulimic, by the way. No one with an eating disorder wants to have their eating disorder. I wanted to get rid of it. So running didn't come from a great place. It came from a very bulimic mindset of, okay, I'm not going to be throwing up, so what can I do to stay slim? And I started running for that reason. So not a great place, really. But it very swiftly started building on my esteem, very quickly. Discovering that my body was capable of achieving amazing things, not just based on how it looks. I think that was the biggest light bulb moment that you talk about.
We talked before we came on. I was going to say came on air like this is some sort of live radio show. You join us after the break for more good talk. No, we were talking about how everyone will suffer from some sort of not necessarily something diagnosable, but some mental health struggles, almost certainly. As I said, I think we've said previously, if you've got a perfect life, let us know. We are very envious.
One of those secrets.
Yeah,
what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you basically have these anxiety. You've had bad depressive episodes. You've struggled with really bad anxiety. And I just wonder if you could. You've touched on it a little bit with the wanting to be slim, wanting to be, you know, like all the other girls and fitting in. What that and some of the other insecurities that you could perhaps talk about to really show people that are perhaps feeling the same sort of insecurities, that they really are not alone in what they're feeling, because you know it can become very manipulative, your mind, and thinking, oh, I'm the only one that understands this, I'm the only one that have these problems,
Yes.
no one else gets me, and your mind tells you that.
Absolutely.
But everyone has these kind of insecurities, so I just wonder
what
they are really.
The insecurities themselves.
So that people know they aren't alone, I guess.
So one that I feel like is still taboo amongst people my age, mid-20s. I know a few people that I'm close to have admitted this to me, and it's something I struggle to admit. Relationship anxiety. I have huge relationship anxiety, and I think that's actually really common. Worrying that you're good enough, that sort of feeling. Worrying that, you know, they could move on without you realizing. And so that's something I still like try and cope with right now. But my insecurity comes about and did come about in a lot of different forms. That's just one of them. Speaking to strangers was massively scary for me.
See what she did to combat that this time was she brought beer, which instantly makes Jess our favourite guest.
Absolutely. I wouldn't recommend it to combat your anxiety or depression. Generally, you have to be in a good place to be drinking the beer.
Yeah, it can make it a bit worse.
And
that gin's the worst for that emotional
drunk.
Oh
my goodness, red wine for me. Can't drink red. I'll be crying within 5. Yeah.
Good Merlot soothes the soul.
It's so upsetting because I love red wine. I guess the biggest way around it is to confront it head on. And I'd say social anxiety is the most prevalent amongst the anxiety and depression that I've experienced. I guess that's the biggest one that's been the flashing red light for me. And Run Talk Run has helped me combat that in a big way.
Yeah, so touching on Run Talk Run a bit more, what first gave you the idea for it? Was it a way for you to personally get to chat to people that had a like-minded problems and shared the same interests as in running, or was it a sort of a more a greater attempt to sort of help a wider community?
I had both in mind when I set it up, actually. Mm-hmm. There were selfish reasons behind it. I want running friends, and I want them now.
Of course.
Why isn't anyone running with me? I'm just going to have to go out to the public.
Just ask Isaac. He's a keen runner, aren't you, Isaac?
I run every day. I mean, what can I say?
Too bad you're not in London.
Yeah, too bad, Isaac.
Should move down here, shouldn't I?
The reason it started was partly due to my resistance to therapy. And I realised I was opening up far more when I was running with my mum. I went home a lot when I was depressed because it felt like a safe place. I didn't have to deal with London. London's not a great place when you're depressed and anxious. So the fact that I had that open environment where it was not intimidating and I was just spewing everything that was on my mind whilst pounding pavements with mum, I kind of thought we need more spaces in between not talking at all and therapy. There needs to be more peer support. So yes, it was partly because I wanted some friends to talk to myself, people that were going to understand.
No shame in that.
There's no shame. I have no shame. And I've owned the runners as friends now. They have no choice. Yeah, I think I needed that space. I needed people that I could talk to without being judged, people that were going to get it. And I think that's all people really need generally.
Is it something... So what exactly is the format of it, for those that don't know? How does Run Talk Run actually work? I mean, it's a pretty self-evident title, but, you know, say I am a 3-year-old.
Okay.
Or maybe not that. Maybe not that.
Let's go for 13.
Yeah.
Right, 13-year-old. I'd like to say we are a mental health support group before we are a running group. The mental health support is the priority. The fact that we run is a side to that. It's just a fantastic way to facilitate the conversation. So we meet twice a week in the evening. So after people have had their busy, stressful days, we have a chat before we run, whilst people trickle in. I kind of ask people how they've been, and they have the opportunity to be like, actually, it's been a really crap day. I'm feeling pretty anxious, and I can be the same. I love it. And then we set off for a very gentle run. We're open to all abilities, so the pace is very
That's good for me.
Yeah, I mean,
I was wondering if I could keep up,
Guys, wait up.
that's a question I get all the time. We're very much a walk-jog running group. For that reason, it really depends on who shows up. If we have a lot of only experienced runners, then yes, it will be faster. But we have beginners.
Is it something you feel is scalable and expandable in the future? Because it's a cracking idea. Because anything that sets the talking aspect to more of the side, so it's not so much of a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
You said the way that people focus on the running and then they can then talk about it. It's not like therapy where it's this big thing. Any sort of group that does that is fantastic. But you have this whole, it's a very intimate thing. So I was just wondering the conflict there between how you would try and expand it and maybe make it, because it's obviously just London based at the minute.
Yes,
but it's the sort of thing which I think would work really well nationwide.
Absolutely, it would,
but keeping that intimate.
I'm excited
nature.
at the moment. We have got Run Talk Run Peterborough starting mid-August. Yeah, and I am due to be talking to a girl in Oxford next week to set one up in Oxford.
So
it is
with the
scalable.
thinking, that you find someone, what would be your sort of criteria for choosing someone to run it? How do you this person in Oxford say how does she qualify to?
Do you know what? All that's happened, I haven't looked for anyone to set these up. These are people that have contacted me, and they have contacted me with their lived experience of mental health. So the lady in Peterborough was so incredibly honest with me on her first contact, and I can gauge just how much this means to her and how much running has helped her as well. So she understands the link. So I think that's the criteria. I think it's very obvious to tell whether someone actually gives a shit.
Yeah,
Really.
Very true.
They're not doing it just for a hobby. They actually agree with the principle.
Yeah, you've got to be a really exploitative type of person to, be the leader of that kind of group of perhaps mentally struggling people.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not giving any ideas. Do not do that.
No.
Never.
There is no criteria.
I think that's the best way,
Even
though.
the run leaders don't need to be experienced runners, to be honest. I don't manage to keep up with a lot of my runners. I'm always at the back.
Oh.
That's where I like to be. So
Keeping an eye on
there is
everyone
no
is-
criteria on running ability either. So
Brilliant. So I also think it's the kind of thing which is transferable in terms of the type of activity.
yes.
Because no matter how sort of slow, you claim to go, there will always be people that just flat out refuse to go running.
Don't like running.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what you've got though is the sort of template to transfer it to other activities and passions. Say, I don't know, like a film club or a hiking club, or I know that's quite similar, but something where you've got that thing that facilitates the conversation,
Yes.
and at the same time you are with a group of like-minded people.
Yeah.
Because not only are you being able to open up with these runners, they're people you naturally get on well with because they are your tribe. They are people that share similar values to you, enjoy doing the same thing with you. You're naturally going to be less guarded
Yes.
and find it easier, and it'll be less awkward.
We have common interests
Exactly.
from the get-go.
So
I think,
quite, because I was looking it up. Is it run by a support? I can't remember what it's called. I'm trying to.
That's
I'm
all right.
racking my brain.
Rethink.
Yes, Rethink
Yes,
Mental Illness
yeah.
Group. And so, what are some of the other groups set up by that?
So Rethink Mental Illness have been fantastic. I started Run Talk Run before I found Rethink. But I was seeking support from mental health charities because I was like, I am in the biggest grey area possible. I need some guidance on how I run this. So Rethink, they support lots. They support groups in lots of formats. To be honest, what I've been told is that Run Talk Run is the most abstract of those support groups, and that most are sort of meeting for a coffee to talk setups.
I think that's perhaps where it needs to change. Then is to have more of these abstract type groups that you can have it as less of a big thing.
Yes, and
Because even if you're
distraction.
just exactly. Even if you're just going for a coffee, you're going for a coffee to talk about your problems.
Yes.
Whereas you can go to your weekly runs, and that week you may have had a good week. You don't have to necessarily be
No.
having a crap time all the time, but it's there if you need it.
Don't get me wrong, we have a lot of runners that come for the run and for a company on a run, not necessarily to talk about their shit. Whether they have it going on or not, I don't know. But I think because we're a beginners group as well, that attracts people in that sense as well. We're a safe running group to come to if you're just starting out.
So do you encourage new people to come along a lot, or I'm just sort of, if it were a group of friends running, because you could realistically set something like this up with a group of friends wherever you are.
Yes.
But then I feel, if you've got new people that you don't know as well, you've got that room to get to know them, which means, going through their problems as a matter of course, rather than talking about sort of the more superficial things amongst friends. So
Right, yeah.
you encourage new people to come a lot.
Absolutely. I do. And I find that people are more willing to open up than you would think as well. I thought people are still going to be very guarded. They don't know me from Adam. They're probably a bit anxious because I know what social anxiety feels like. Coming to a new running group is huge when you're feeling a bit off key, shall we say.
A polite way of putting it.
That's a very light way of putting it. So I do worry to a certain extent about making sure they know it's a safe place. So I kind of reiterate it all the time and share my own, share how I'm really feeling so that people know it's safe to talk about that, not just the have you tried that restaurant sort of stuff.
Yeah, cut the small talk crap. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think if you join up a new group, say you're a new runner joining your group where you don't know anyone, although it's difficult in the way that seeing a new therapist is a complete stranger, it's a much lesser end of that spectrum, and you don't have to make any airs or graces about who you are because they don't know you. It can be very difficult to open up even to your closest friends. Isaac, I really struggled initially to talk to you about things, not because I didn't trust you, just because you know them and you've got such a network and wall built up, and there's so much sort of padding around it.
Yes.
Whereas if you're with new people that you don't know from the off, you can set things how you want to set them.
Yeah.
There's no sort of background noise associated with it.
Absolutely. And what I feel is that when I do go see some old, very close friends of mine, school friends, like you guys are, like you seem like such a sweet, like you say, like an old married couple. It's really sweet.
He's waiting for the proposal.
It's really hard to bring up difficult topics because when you do meet, it's often a celebratory thing. You're going for someone's birthday drinks or you're going for a meal, and you don't want to bring the tone down with, I'm feeling really bad. It's really sad that it is that way, but often for me, when we meet, it's to celebrate. And you don't want to be the one to start being honest about shit.
Yeah, well, it's the whole premise behind these call lines, like Samaritans and things like that, where you can talk to a stranger. I think this is a way of combining something you love, i.e. running, and talking to strangers. So, what's better than that?
Yeah, absolutely. And the friends that I've made from it, so a couple of people that have come from the very beginning are now really close friends. Our whole friendship has been formed on being honest about it. So now I've got these friends who aren't like my home friends. My home friends I love to pieces, but the friendship's formed on that honesty.
Yeah, and arguably that's the most sort of genuine friendship there is.
Yes.
Because, as I said, you've completely opened up from the off.
Yeah.
There's this is who I am. Take me as I am.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, deal with it. Important question. What is your favourite distance of race?
Ooh, that's a tough
Just
question.
generic running question.
That's so running. I prefer I'd say half marathon.
Yes, good answer.
Longer. I'm a long distance runner. I like to run slow. I don't like to race fast. So I like to pick long distances where it's more acceptable to run slow.
And sort of road races, trail races, What is your race of choice?
See, trail
If you
running
choose
is
to
so
accept it.
cool right now. It's so Insta.
Oh, it's so hip.
It's so hip.
So trendy.
It's so Instagram
A la
right now.
mode.
But I love pounding pavements. I like city running, to be honest.
Isaac, pounding pavements means running, just for, the less experienced.
I've never done that.
I realise I'm coming across as very mean to Isaac. I would like to say it comes from a place of love. Anyway, it doesn't. Yeah, so that is your favourite distance. Are you training for anything in particular at the minute?
You've
got any races coming up?
I've just signed up to something really crazy, actually. I don't really know
you've given
why.
yourself a big build up there.
It's
no.
justified. It's justified.
All
It's called the Speed Project, and essentially it's an ultra relay next March, where a team of eight of us ladies, will be running together from Los Angeles to Las Vegas, which is
Just
quite
sounds like a
the
hen
distance.
party, doesn't it?
The best sort of hen party. Running hen party. I was about to say my hen party, but then I realised I'd really worry George. It's going to be fantastic. It's 340 miles between us. So 7 of us will be in a car while one of us is running, and we swap at various points. So that's a big one. I've got New York Marathon coming up as well, and Amsterdam. Yeah.
This just sounds like an excuse for a holiday, really.
Lots of holidays, yeah.
Oh, that's what the reason. Honestly, one of the reasons I run when I do is just so I can eat what I want. Oh, it's a beautiful
That's a
feeling.
great benefit.
Oh, you just go out for a long run and you'll come back in and you'll whack out some crazy combination.
Yep.
You're like porridge, then ice cream, and then I think a sausage roll, because why not? You just
Absolutely.
calories mean nothing.
Yeah, basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think what it does, sorry to go back to bulimia after bringing it to such positive topics.
No.
Bulimia really fucked with my hunger signalling.
Yeah.
So running really brings back my appetite.
Yeah, it's a sort of routine back to it.
Not that I run to eat, but it really helps my stomach realise when it's hungry or not. So yeah, it's good in that sense.
I think it's always important to be mindful of why you're doing it. As you said, not running to eat or to give you the spare calories.
Like you say,
it's a nice side
to
effect.
make you want food.
Exactly. Yeah. But you should always, and I have to watch out what I'm doing for. Am I going for the run for the sake of it? For the sort of the endorphin rush, which is ultimately what you should be doing it for, or am I doing it so that I can have, that
the whole bag.
Yeah, the whole bag of crisps, the extra scoop of ice cream, whatever it may be.
That's a great benefit, though.
It is, but that's all it ever should be. Is the sort of side effect of it.
Yeah.
Isaac, I've had a wonderful idea, which you're going to hate.
Go on.
You heard it on this podcast. We are going to get Isaac Rookmore to sign up for a race.
For a race?
No.
Okay.
Yes, we are. We are. Well, last episode we talked about accountability, and to our shame, neither of us has lived up to the goal of what we set out to do. Isaac set himself the challenge of going for a run.
Once.
Okay.
He has not. I set myself the challenge of writing something. As creative writing is what I'm going to do. I have not. But, as any healthy mindset should be, if you fail at something, just make it more unachievable and go for a bigger goal. So,
it doesn't excite you enough if you haven't started.
Exactly, yeah. You're just looking for that challenge aspect. A run is nothing for a Superman like Isaac. So, you heard it here on Life Are We There Yet? Isaac Rookmore, will you agree to do a race? I will do it with you.
What, a half marathon?
What are we
Not
thinking,
a full
Jess?
marathon.
Oh no,
So,
not a full. Would you?
There's a fantastic one at the
He hates
Olympic
me right
Park.
now.
It's at the Olympic Park, and on the same day they host a 5K, a 10K, a 10-mile, a half. Yeah, that's it. But there's such a variety of distances all on the same day, and you can kind of if you set out to do a half, this is what I did last time. I set out to do a half, and then I stopped at the 10-mile point, and I still got a medal because they had a 10-mile race going on. So it's all great. So I'd recommend that one.
So when was that?
That one, there's one, they hold them so often. There's
Do you
one,
hear that, Isaac? They hold them so often.
Great.
There's one on the 8th of September.
Oh, that's quite soon actually. How about a 10K?
Yeah,
Somewhere.
yeah. Yeah, I could
Just
do that.
say to the three people listening that you are going to run /jog/walk/crawl a 10K.
I've just got memories of me doing cross country at school where I was like the last one to finish.
That
When
was
you got
me.
that clap, and everyone starts clapping. Yeah, you got it. You're doing really. Go away. You're pitying me. I don't want your pity.
That's it. Like, well, I better get training, I suppose. But even without doing an event, like, what would be your prescription? What distance would I have to run, or how often would I have to go out for a run to start to see sort of any sort of effect to my mental health and well-being?
I think when you're starting out, any running is
I
fantastic.
need an excuse.
I quite honestly, if you're finding it really tough, you're going too fast. You are going too fast. That's what I tell every beginner.
Yeah.
And I encourage beginners to slow down because everyone thinks they're in a running club, so they should be running pretty fast. But my biggest advice would be to actually hold yourself back, because if you are heaving and gasping for breath, then you're going too fast for your body. You need to work it up really, really flipping slowly to actually maintain it as something that you enjoy, not dread.
Yeah, because that's been the thing in the past. I think whether I push myself too far or not, it's not been the most enjoyable thing. But I think I'll give it a go. I'll go nice and slow. See what happens.
That's a yes. Ooh. Oh, look
I'll
at that.
be there, so I'll know.
Yeah. Oh, even more incentive. Yeah, we'll come and do one in London. Oh, honestly, there's such a look of hatred right now being directed at him. He's,
What have you done?
I thought we were friends. That pretty much, if Jess is happy to.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you'd like to get off your chest?
I don't think so. I could do that twice a week or once a month. No.
So
it's
yeah,
been lovely.
if you're London-based, I don't know if we have any London-based listeners. If you are, go along to one of Jess's Run Talk Run sessions twice weekly.
Yes, Tuesdays, Thursdays.
And where are they, roughly? In aside from London.
Southwark. So near where we are right now. One is at the Bridge Gym on Southwark Bridge Road.
Yep.
And one is at the Gym Group Waterloo.
Wonderful. Jess, we can't let you leave without asking for a quote. When you are down, when you are struggling, when you are mile 10 of 13 pounding the pavement and your lungs feel like they're giving out, what is you tell yourself to keep on going that our listeners might be able to sort of derive some benefit from?
I have it tattooed on me to remind me when I'm like a mile 20 of a marathon. It's a state of mind. Although it sounds quite harsh and abrupt when you're feeling like crap, I actually got it done when I was in a very darkest hole, and it was the harshness that I kind of needed. It's a state of mind. I am in control of my state of mind. I can choose to look at this differently right now.
Question of perspective.
I mean, like, my legs will be screaming either way, but I can choose to
am
listen
currently-
to them, or I can choose to carry on.
Currently face down on the pavement, but it's a state of mind.
Yeah, it comes back down to that choice thing. There is an element of control of what we're thinking.
And so our fateful tale draws to an end for another episode. And we shall return to the murky mists of Shropshire once more. Jess, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You've been absolutely wonderful. I hope you've not minded it too much.
No, it's been really, really lovely.
Oh, too kind. And she got us beer. Where can we find you on social medias if you'd like to be followed?
Run, Talk, Run is the handle.
There's no excuses for getting that wrong. It's quite simple.
It's very simple. Yeah, Run, Talk, Run.
Isaac, where can we be found?
We could be found on.
And now the news.
We could be found on live. Are we there yet? On Instagram, on our new website, www.lifewithair.com. And we haven't really done a lot with Facebook, but if I say it now, it might give us a bit of a reason to put some more stuff on there. So
Like your training pictures.
yeah, my training pictures. So yeah, find us on Facebook as well. Life Are We There Yet? But that's about it, isn't it?
So all that remains to be said is goodbye from Jess.
Goodbye.
Very
Was-
good.
is that-
On
was that a
cue, on
prompt?
cue. Yeah. We'll try that again. Goodbye from me, Isaac. You don't get one. And as always, just keep plodding along. Goodbye.